The economy is doing fantastically well. We have people over in China right now. We're negotiating with China. We'll see what happens. We're either going to make a great deal or we're not going to make a deal at all. But a lot of great things are happening, and including with China. Our country has gone way up in terms of its differential. We're the #1 economy in the world. It's picked up tremendously in the last 3 years since I've been here. So a lot of great things are happening. A lot of really great things are happening. The economy is through the roof. I guess we'll hopefully get good decisions from certain branches of government. We'll see what happens. But we have a lot of good things happening. We were just speaking with the Department of Commerce, and we have interest in our country like we've never had before.
How does it work? How does it come Mr. President, do you regret targeting Baltimore?
No, Baltimore has been very badly mishandled for many years. As you know, Congressman Cummings has been there for a long time. He's had a very iron hand on it. It's a corrupt city. There's no question about it. All you have to do is look at the facts. The government has pumped in over the years billions and billions of dollars to no avail, to absolutely no avail. Baltimore is an example of what corrupt government leads to. Billions of dollars have been given, and I feel so sorry for the people of Baltimore. And if they ask me, we will get involved. But we're already involved from the standpoint that over many years, billions and billions of dollars have been given to Baltimore. It's been misspent, it's been missing, it's been stolen with a lot of corrupt government. And as you know, Cummings has been in charge. Now, I will say this. I think that Representative Cummings should take his oversight committee and start doing oversight on Baltimore. He'd find out some real things.
On the Fed, China, how does the talks go today? And on the Fed, what should the rate cut be?
So the talks are moving very well with China, but they were often with China, but China always makes a new deal at the end, or seems to. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars from China in the form of tariffs. Our people are not paying for it. China reduced their currency. They devalued their currency, and they're pumping money into the system in order to pay for it. They had the worst year in 27 years. They've had a terrible year because of the tariffs. A lot of companies are moving out of China. You've never seen this before. The United States is doing phenomenally well, and we're taking in tens of billions of dollars from China. We're giving some money to our farmers who have been really targeted by China, to do a number of them, and because they like me, the farmers like me, and I love the farmers. And I will say that the farmers are very grateful. The most they've ever spent on agricultural product is $16 billion. So when they pulled out, I took just a small part of the money that China's paying us, and I gave it toward the farmers, and the farmers are very happy.
Is the quarter-point rate cut from the Fed enough for you, sir?
The Fed moved, in my opinion, far too early and far too severely. It puts me at a somewhat of a disadvantage. Fortunately, I've made the economy so strong that nothing's going to stop us. But the Fed could have made it a lot easier. I would like to see a large cut, and I'd like to see immediately the quantitative tightening stop. It should be stopped. For them to have done quantitative tightening and also higher interest rates simultaneously, I think was a big mistake. I also think that had they not done it, as good as we've done, we've set a record, as you will tell, as you will say, in the stock market. We have the all-time high in the history of the stock market. I think I would have been 10,000 points higher, and I think we would have been in the fours with GDP. President Obama had 0 interest rates. We have normalized interest rates. With 0 interest rates, anything happens, and yet we still blew his economy away.
Was it a mistake not retaining Janet Yellen?
I don't talk about that. I'm very disappointed in the Fed. I think they acted too quickly by far, and I think I've been proven right. People have said I was right. They were wrong. The Fed is often wrong. the Fed is off and running. The Washington Post called Mitch McConnell what? I think the Washington Post is a Russian asset by comparison. Mitch McConnell loves our country. He's done a great job. We're trying to pass an infrastructure bill. It's being written up right now as we speak for our highways and our roadways. Mitch McConnell has gotten more judges than probably any, I mean, in all fairness, with my help. But as a combination, we're going to be up very soon to 179 federal judges. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. And other than George Washington, we'll end up having the highest percentage of judges put on the court, and it's going to be a legacy. Mitch McConnell is a man that knows less about Russia and Russian influence than even Donald Trump, and I know nothing. So I think it's a horrible thing when a paper, which is really just a paper for the benefit of Amazon, the Washington Post, is fake news, just like the New York Times is fake news. It's put there for the benefit, the Washington Post, of Amazon. That's my opinion, and I think it's a disgrace. And if they actually said that, I didn't read it. If they actually said that Mitch McConnell is an asset of Russia, they ought to be ashamed of themselves, and they ought to apologize. Well, I think right now, I am watching. I think right now it will be Sleepy Joe. I think. I feel he'll limp across the line. That's what I think. So what I think doesn't mean anything. But I know the other people. I know him. I think he's off his game by a lot. But I think, personally, I think it's going to be Sleepy Joe. No, I think I'm helping myself because I'm pointing out the tremendous corruption that's taken place in Baltimore and other Democratic-run cities. All you have to do is look at the past mayors in Baltimore, see what happened. No, I think I'm helping myself, and I'll tell you what. The White House and myself and letters and emails and phone calls have received more phone calls than I think on any other subject of people from Baltimore and other cities corruptly run by Democrats thanking me for getting involved. Those people are living in hell in Baltimore. They're largely African-American. You have a large African-American population, and they really appreciate what I'm doing, and they've let me know it. They really appreciate it. And by the way, the numbers just came out. Unemployment for African Americans is the lowest it's been, the best numbers, meaning in the history of our country, the lowest in the history of our country. But people have called from Baltimore thanking me so much because all that money that's been spent over 20 years has been stolen and wasted by people like Elijah Cummings.
Do you want a free trade agreement with Brazil?
Well, I have a great relationship with Brazil. I have a fantastic relationship with your president, and he's a great gentleman. He was here, as you know. In fact, they say the Trump of Brazil. I like that. That's a compliment. And by the way, I think he's doing a great job. It's a tough job, but I think your president is doing a fantastic job. He's a wonderful man with a wonderful family. Yeah, we're going to work on a free trade agreement with Brazil. Brazil's a big trading partner. They charge us a lot of tariffs, but other than that, we love the relationship.
Are you concerned about the health of Russian opposition leader?
The what?
Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who apparently might have been poisoned while in prison. Have you heard about that?
I've heard about it. I don't know about it, but I'll find out about it. This is new. I heard about it last night.
Are you concerned more about the RAC1ST nomination? You have Democrats and Republicans who say Trump loyalists did not mean to be an Ivy.
Well, John Ratcliffe is a brilliant man. He is a wonderful person. I spoke to him long before about this, months ago. I spoke to him long before the Mueller fiasco. That was a fiasco. I think probably nobody in the history of Capitol Hill has embarrassed themselves like what Mueller did to himself and to the Democrats. But John Ratcliffe, I spoke to him about this for a long time. He's a very talented guy. He's a strong man. It's what we need in that position. I am the least racist person there is anywhere in the world. When con men, who I've known almost all my business life, because I had to deal with them, unfortunately, in New York, but I got along with him, Al Sharpton. Now, he's a racist. He's a racist. But when people, let me explain to you. What I've done for African Americans in 2.5 years, no president has been able to do anything like it. Unemployment at the lowest level in the history of our country for African Americans. Nobody can beat that. You look at poverty levels, they're doing better than they've ever done before. So many things, opportunity zones, criminal justice reform. President Obama couldn't get it done. It was done, really the biggest beneficiary probably is African Americans. I got criminal justice reform done. President Obama couldn't get it done. No other president was able to get it done. What I've done for African Americans, no president, I would say, has done. Now, I'll say this. They are so happy, because I get the calls. They are so happy at what I've been able to do in Baltimore and other Democratic-run, corrupt cities. The money has been stolen, what they've done. It's been wasted and it's been stolen. Billions and billions of dollars. And the African-American community is so thankful. They've called me and they said, finally, somebody is telling the truth.
Do you think there will be a trade deal with China before November 2020?
Well, I think the biggest problem to a trade deal is China would love to wait and just hope. They hope. It's not going to happen, I hope. But they would just love if I got defeated. So they could deal with somebody like Elizabeth Warren or Sleepy Joe Biden or any of these people, because then they'd be allowed and able to continue to rip off our country like they've been doing for the last 30 years. China has been taking out hundreds of billions of dollars a year with our country. And now what I've done with the tariffs is, number one, they had the worst year they've had in 27 years. Yesterday's Wall Street Journal, the worst year in 27 years. Companies are leaving China by the thousands, and their prices are coming down. And I will tell you this, China is dying to make a deal with me. But whether or not I'll do it, it's up to me. It's not up to them.
What can you get China to give you this week?
What?
Just this week, what do you think you can get China to give you in the negotiations?
Well, I think China's willing to give up a lot, but that doesn't mean I'm willing to accept it. I think if China had their wish, they'd wait till after the election, they'll pray that Trump loses, and then they'll make a deal with a stiff, somebody that doesn't know what they're doing, like Obama and Biden, like all of the presidents before. Because what they've done is they've just picked our pockets as a nation. That's not happening with Trump.
Do we know anything about that?
That's okay. Well, I think if that's the case, I'd be shocked. But if that's the case, they're fighting against their people. Because the African-American people have been calling the White House. They have never been so happy as what a president has done. Not only the lowest unemployment in history for African Americans, not only opportunity zones for really the biggest beneficiary of the inner cities, and not only criminal justice reform, but they're so happy that I pointed out the corrupt politics of Baltimore. It's filthy dirty, it's so horrible, and they are happy as hell. So you may have a couple of politicians boycott, but it's all a fix. It's all a fix. The fact is, African-American people love the job I'm doing because I'm working for them. I'm not working for the politicians. Oh, absolutely. It's what he should do, what Elijah Cummings should do, is he should take his oversight committee, bring them down to Baltimore, and invest all of it and really study the billions and billions of dollars that's been stolen. It's been wasted. It's been stolen. They ought to take that beautiful waste of an oversight committee. Go down to Baltimore and other Democratic-run cities and take a look, see if you can find the billions that have been stolen.
They oversee your actions, though, sir.
My relationship with Kim Jong-un is a very good one, as I'm sure you've seen. We'll see what happens. I can't tell you what's going to happen. I know one thing, that if my opponent was president, if she won, you would be in a major war right now with North Korea. And we are nowhere close. So we'll see. I have a good relationship with him. I like him. He likes me. We'll see what happens. At the right time, I'll visit. But the people of Baltimore are very thankful. They have let us know by the thousands of people, because of the fact that finally somebody's pointing out how corrupt Baltimore is, how billions and billions of dollars have been stolen. And the ones that like it the best, what I'm doing, are African-American voters. Those are the ones. Thank you.
The president there just a few moments ago on his way from the White House to Williamsburg, Virginia. Let's do some quick fact checks, because oftentimes in the president's interactions with reporters, there are false things that he says. For one, he said that China is paying, that the U.S. is getting billions and billions of dollars in tariffs from China. Of course, the fact is that U.S. importers and consumers pay for tariffs. That's not a true statement. He also made quite a charge against Representative Elijah Cummings, saying that Baltimore has stolen, he seems to be saying, or wasted billions of dollars. He then said it again later there, Poppy, claiming, it seems to be, accusing Cummings of stealing billions of dollars in aid money. It is not clear what that is based on. I think we could fairly call that a baseless charge. But also, I think key, and you heard this as well as me, Poppy, the president showing no hesitation to stick with his attacks on Cummings and claiming that it helps him.
Yep. 100%. I mean, Jim, he also said that the Washington Post, one of the most storied journalistic institutions in this country, is a Russian asset with no basis in fact. And then he said that it is for the benefit of Amazon. Just because Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post and Amazon, they're not connected at all. And Washington Post does a lot of critical reporting on Amazon. So just setting those two facts straight for everyone, because they were stunning to hear. Jim.
No question. No questions. Suzanne, if we could begin with you, because it's CNN's reporting that within the White House, and again, we've heard this times before, that some of his aides are uncomfortable or have some discomfort with the president's attacks on Elijah Cummings. Despite that, you heard from the president there really expanding his attacks on the sitting representative, claiming without basis that he's stolen billions of dollars in federal money. It appears the president is going to stick with this line of attack.
He's doubling and tripling down on what he has said before, and it seems like this is a winning approach, at least in his mind, because, yes, CNN reporting that there are at least some staff, some members in the White House that are concerned and uncomfortable with the kind of language going after a very popular Congressman Cummings, as well as the whole city of Baltimore. We heard the president say that the people in Baltimore were living in hell. And that he was the least racist person that there is. And when you talk about the fact checks here, and I want to talk about this a little bit more, he said that there were thousands of people through emails and calls that he has been hearing from since just yesterday, the day before, when he brought up all of this. People from Baltimore, he said, largely African Americans, who are affirming what he says and are appreciative of the complaints that he has leveled against the congressman. That, of course, needs to be fact checked. He says it's one of the things, the issues that has come up beyond any other issue when getting some sort of response from the community. And I asked him specifically, in light of that, there are lawmakers from Virginia who are boycotting his event today in Jamestown, who say they are not coming because they are highly offended. He does not belong there to talk about freedom and democracy. And he essentially put that aside side minimize that, saying that they are not serving their own community, that there are not a large number of people who feel this way. And so it's interesting, Poppy and Jim, to listen to what he is saying here in light of the fact that there are so many African Americans that we have heard from who are very angry and very upset about the kind of broad brushstroke that he has given to Baltimore and other cities.
Yeah. Phil Mattingly, the president also talked about China and the tariffs. And again, as Jim rightly pointed out, falsely claimed that China is paying us billions of dollars. Even the president's own administration has said that that's not how it works. But one thing that struck me is he said that his second bailout to Midwest farmers, by the way, because of the tariffs on China, was more than China's ever spent on U.S. agriculture, $16 billion. Our Daniel Dale, who's a great reporter and a great fact checker here at CNN, points out that's just inaccurate because just a few years ago, 2014, China spent $30 billion on U.S. agriculture. That is the price that American farmers are paying in all of this.
Yeah, look, it's some of the numbers he was tossing out and also kind of the president's understanding and kind of repeated explanation as to how tariffs work are fairly wildly inaccurate. I think the interesting element here is this is an area where the president is kind of on his own inside his own party. You look at the aid that was given to farmers. That aid was pushed for heavily by Republicans on Capitol Hill who are uncomfortable with some of the tariff positions he's taking. Look, you're going to get bipartisan support on Capitol Hill to come down harder on China related to some of their trade issues, to how they deal with IP, how they deal with government secrets, things of that nature. But the posture that the president has taken has made a lot of folks from states that the president won very uncomfortable, and that's why the aid has come in through the back door from the Agriculture Department. I think the big question now is, and Poppy, you've covered this stuff, you know it very well, how long does this go? I think there's not a lot of optimism right now that a big deal with China is in the offing, even though administration officials are heading over there. What is kind of the breaking point or tipping point, even if the aid is coming from the government, from those who are wary of how long this fight can go? The U.S. economy is clearly in a position to probably outlast where China is right now, but that doesn't make it any easier for the people on the ground who need that aid right now, guys.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point because the president brings up what is a genuine concern, that China waits out the Trump presidency just to see if he's reelected, because why make a big and potentially costly deal with Trump if you have the perception you might get a better deal after the election? Wes Lowry, the president has made baseless allegations of corruptions or crime before. You could think of a few, perhaps saying that Ted Cruz's father was somehow involved in the Kennedy assassination. Yes. Here we have a sitting president accusing a sitting U.S. Congressman, Elijah Cummings, of taking, but also, well, stealing, it seems, billions of dollars in federal aid without basis. How do you respond to that? How do you cover that? Does the White House, is the White House uncomfortable? A word we often hear when the president makes claims like that.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear more from our colleagues who are White House reporters about the way we always get this cycle. The president doesn't says these things, and we get the anonymous accounts of all the people who are uncomfortable. And then by tomorrow, they'll say, actually, it was the most brilliant thing he's ever done. First of all, let me note, not a Russian asset. None of my colleagues here at the Washington Post are Russian assets. That was clearly baseless and made up. Second, I do think this attack on Congressman Cummings, and again, I think it's important to note, look, any member of Congress is not above scrutiny, right? And there are clearly problems in the city of Baltimore and more broadly in the district. But that said, Elijah Cummings isn't the mayor of Baltimore, right? He's a member of Congress, right? And so the idea that you would walk around the city and pick any problem and this is somehow the congressman's personal responsibility does betray the fact that this isn't really about accountability, right? The president is, in the same way that he used to talk about American carnage, he would talk about sending the National Guard in Chicago, that in many ways these are code words, right? That for a lot of voters, especially the president's voters, white suburbanites, white rural folks, those people live in the burbs and in rural areas for a reason. They don't live in the cities. In many cases, there are code words here. When they talk about Chicago, when you talk about the rat-infested Baltimore, that means something. I think there's one other point. I just think it's really important to note here, right? When we talk about the problems in Baltimore, there are certainly problems locally, right? That they do have real issues with the local government at times, and there's been massive turnover with mayors and police chiefs. This is also a city that pioneered a lot of racist housing policy, right? That a lot of what we see in terms of the problems today in Baltimore can be traced directly back to how the city made decisions to force poor and black, brown people into certain parts of the city and allowed white people to go to other parts. And those parts where the black and brown people were forced to live are still the parts that are plagued with drugs, with crime, with gangs, with police shootings. And so, look, if we want to talk about the problems in Baltimore or any major city, there is some government corruption. There's a lot of history of inequality there. I just don't think it's what the president's talking about.
Yeah.
Well, then go there. I mean, Jim, you heard I asked Mark Lauder, who's working with the president's re-election campaign, is he going to go? Ivanka Trump has spent, I think, made a few trips to Baltimore, but the president hasn't gone to tour these neighborhoods. You know, I mean, it struck me, Jim.
It's a good point. Listen, you know, if you care, you go there, and you might. And you made this point too, Poppy, as well. There are many urban areas and rural areas, frankly, that face poverty and other issues. Why not the attention there as well? Listen, thanks to all of you. Always good to have you on. Poppy, back to your end.
Okay. All right. So with me here on set, Bakari Sellers, former South Carolina House of Representatives and CNN commentator, Todd Spangler, Washington correspondent for the Detroit Free Press, a great paper, and Crystal is a CNN editor at large. Also back with me, former Michigan Governor James Blanchard. Thank you for your patience. We were mid-interview when the president started talking.
And what I heard was so outrageous that it's sad. But let's talk about other things, perhaps.
Okay.
Oh, I do want to mention Elijah Cummings.
Yes, because I know you're friends.
I was at a luncheon with him a couple of weeks. There's not a more honorable, decent, kind, respected member of Congress anywhere. And all the Republicans on his committee know that, and I hope they step forward. The other thing is this, that just the average income in his district is above the national average. In one of his cities, Columbia, is the safest city in the entire Washington metropolitan area. And finally, let me say, the Republicans are planning their annual conference in Baltimore in September. I wonder if they're going to cancel it.
I hope everyone goes to, well, I hope not, because that could hurt the economy there, but I hope everyone would go and look at the amazing development on the waterfront there in Baltimore, what they've done, companies like Under Armour building up. It's a beautiful city, and now everyone should go and spend money there and help. Okay, wait, let's talk about tonight. Kind of a big night, Saliza.
Yeah, kind of
a big
deal. Yeah, I mean, look, I think a lot of times people in years past would say, it's a debate in, June. Look at what happened, and Bakari, who is supporting Senator Harris, is well aware of this. Look at what happened in the first debate and what happened afterward. Kamala Harris, yes, did she have a boom and then fade back slightly? Yeah, but she's in a lot better place today than she was 2 months ago, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But the big one is there are a lot of eyeballs on this, and the truth is we don't have a front runner like we did in 2016 on the Democratic side. Hillary Clinton at this point was at 60-something, and Bernie Sanders is at 15. Joe Biden is the front runner nominally in this race, but he's at, in this latest poll, which is a good poll for him, 34. There's a lot of people who are undecided. There are also a lot of people, I think, who are for him, who will peel off quickly. As we saw, debates do matter in a field where people don't know as much about the candidates and don't have a clear favorite.
Bakari, talking about tonight, I know you're a supporter of Senator Harris. We'll see her tomorrow night. But tonight, big standoff between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Then you've got Pete Buttigieg as well. And my question to you is, we've seen the polling that has shown that Warren and Harris have pulled away Sanders' most liberal voters. That is obviously a cause for concern for his campaign. What does the Sanders camp have to do tonight to try to turn that ship around?
Well, I think the clashes you're going to see tonight are going to be around ideological lines. And I think they're going to be sharper than people give it credit for. I mean, I think people are looking at this and kind of saying, it's going to be Bernie and Elizabeth and they're going to get along. And then you're going to have Pete and Beto and one of them is going to have to stand out. I don't look at it like that. I think you have people on stage like Steve Bullock, for example, who are going to make the case that a moderate has to be the nominee. And they're going to draw sharp contrast against Bernie and Elizabeth. I think that is going to be the tension that you see on stage from some of those individuals who are around the stage. I believe Hickenlooper's on the stage tonight as well.
It's basically, I mean, if you look at it, it's largely, to Bakari's point, it's largely Sanders and Warren, the two sort of big liberal iconic figures, and everybody else on that stage would probably describe themselves as moderate.
And that's where Beto and Pete will also be able to kind of make some hay. Mm-hmm. The other thing is we can't discount what we just heard from the president and that impact on the debate tonight. I said this earlier this morning, and I don't know a better way to say it other than this stage tonight lacks diversity. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be very interesting how these individuals on stage. We know that Beto and Pete, Elizabeth and Bernie can deal with race. I want to hear how everyone else deals with race, because he's not picking on Baltimore because he doesn't like the clam chowder. He's not picking. This is a race issue.
Can I, to that point, I think, and the Detroit Free Press has done just such a great job staying on the Flint story, the Flint, Michigan story. I was reading your guys' latest piece this morning, and that's also a race issue. I mean, look what happened in Flint, Michigan. Look how much of the population there is African American, and just the total abdication of responsibility by the federal government, by the state government there. A lot of these candidates have gone to Flint in the last few weeks, but a lot of the people in Flint feel like years after they found out there was lead in their water that affects their children for their entire life, the candidates are going there. Many of them feel, according to your paper, for photo ops and politics, and they're not really going to change anything.
That's right. I think there's a lot of feeling in Michigan generally that politicians tend to come in, give some lip service, move on. And with Flint and with Detroit, there's been a lot of that over the years where things haven't gone done. It's really interesting, though. I think that the president's comments maybe are meant to serve him politically, but may backfire him in a place like Michigan that has dealt with racial animus with its suburbs and its urban areas over the years. And they know how to deal with this. I mean, it may gin up his base, but at the same time, it's going to hurt him another way.
All right, but help me understand that, because I see it two ways here. I see the Warren, Michigan GM plant that's been open for 78 years, just news this week that it's shuttering, right? That's not good for the president. He said, don't sell your house, don't move. You've got Lordstown and now the Warren GM plant. At the same time, I look at the economic numbers. I look at the GDP growth in Michigan. I look at like 4.2% unemployment under Trump, and I think that's a good story.
Right. No, there's absolutely people that the Trump economy has not worked for in Michigan. Other people, like in a lot of other places, it's done okay. I honestly think, though, this president would be much further ahead in a state like Michigan, in a moderate state, if he were less insulting, more civil. I mean, if he did not do the things that people in places like Macomb County and Oakland County don't want to hear him doing.
So, Liz, switching gears here a little bit, you had a really interesting column yesterday. And I was like, come on our show in the morning, because I found it really interesting. People I'm pointing out. Kirsten Gillibrand laid out all of her cards. Why?
I mean, so it's relevant to tonight and tomorrow night, because last week, to our colleague Eric Bradner, the Beto O'Rourke people said, Beto is itching to go after Pete Buttigieg, which to me, I'm
why
like,
would you say that?
And then they said, and we're going to go after him on his record in South Bend. What do you do? Why are we... I just don't, strategically, I don't get the point, because guess what? Pete Buttigieg's campaign probably is going to get to be made aware that they're planning that. Same thing with Gillibrand. She's in Iowa last week, and she says several of the candidates don't think it's okay, have said it's not okay for a woman to work outside the home. Then they won't say who it is, because it's clear she's saving it up for this debate tomorrow night when she's on stage with Joe Biden, who is, probably the person who has said something like that over his long Senate career. What I don't understand strategically is, if you find that nugget of opposition research, why not do it? Bakari and I were talking about this off air. Why not do it the way Kamala Harris did it? Don't signal what you're doing. Don't telegraph. Do it in the moment so they don't have time to prepare. Joe Biden stumbles and bumbles over that answer. Kamala Harris looks presidential. She looks in command. She's speaking from her life story. Everything you want out of a candidate. I would want someone from either the Beto campaign or the Gillibrand campaign to tell me why, if you have an attack you think it's going to work.
Help me understand.
Help me help you. I don't get it.
Also today, one of the things tonight, because I know that even as a Harris supporter, I can tell you her weakest link has been healthcare. Everything that I've told her
I still don't fully understand.
Well, this actually her plan is good, but she has to be able to articulate her plan clearly and stand in it.
Okay.
Who else has to do that tonight? Elizabeth Warren. Because do you know what's not a healthcare plan? I'm with Bernie. You have to be able to articulate that.
We gotta go.
I want to say,
gentlemen,
the president is the Pied Piper of hatred. That will backfire in Michigan. I guarantee.